The Mini 2, it's coming soon. We're gonna talk about it in today's video. We're also gonna compare it to the original Mini, so let's get right into it. Okay, so I'm Brick Aramella, the Drone Pilot Pro, and today I'm gonna talk about the Mini 2. So DJI changed it. Now with the Mavic Mini 2, they got rid of the Mavic part, so they're just gonna call it Mini 2. Kind of like the Ronin S that just came out, the Ronin S2, I should say, that came out a couple weeks ago. They changed that as well, so they just call it the RS2. They're kind of shortening all the titles, so when we get this new Mini, it's gonna be called the Mini 2. Now before we go into the specs, I just wanna point out how this Mini 2 is different from the DJI Mavic Mini. So there's a lot of similarities, but there are some major differences. So all the specs in blue we're still not sure about, but all the specs in black are confirmed. So I just use those two colors to distinguish the two confirmed and speculative specs. Now this is actually the original DJI Mavic Mini, but it's basically the same size as the Mini 2, so I'm gonna use it for this video. And the reason DJI is coming out with such a small drone that weighs just under 250 grams, anywhere from about 245 to 249. It says 249, but I have the feeling it's gonna be something like 246 or 247, because DJI wants you to be able to put a filter on it and still be under 250 grams. Why is that so important? Well, two factors. If you're under 250 grams, at least in the United States, you don't have to register your drone with the FAA. And the other reason is because remote ID is imminent. All the people in charge at the FAA are talking about remote ID as we speak. They're having a meeting about it and they're gonna make a final decision. So if that goes through the way it's been written, then that means that drones under 250 grams are probably gonna be more popular, because if you use a drone under 250 grams, you don't have to comply with remote ID if you're a hobbyist. Now, if you want more information about that, I made a video right over there, but we're gonna continue on with this video. So because these new regulations are gonna affect so many people, I don't think DJI wanted to come out with a really big drone. They wanted to keep it under 250 grams. That way, no matter what the FAA said, people would still be able to fly this drone. So those are all good reasons why the Mini 2 is gonna come out on November 5th. Now you may say to yourself, you don't have the Mini 2 in your hands right now. Yes, that's true. However, there's been a bunch of people who have bought the Mini 2 in Best Buy, and I've also gone into Best Buy and seen it. Unfortunately, it was released a little too early, and I guess they didn't get the memo from DJI, or maybe DJI did that on purpose, but somehow some people were able to buy it. A very few amount of people, but it's out there, it's online, and of course, once it's online, it goes everywhere. So everyone kind of knows that it's gonna come out, and the word is that it's gonna come out on Thursday, November 5th. Now looking at these two controllers, this is the Mavic Air 2 controller and this is the Mavic Mini controller. However, with the new Mini 2, they just made it almost identical to the Mavic Air 2 controller. So it looks exactly the same, this big shape. So if you like this controller, you're gonna be happy because it's gonna be like this. Honestly, I prefer this one, but I'm probably in the minority. So a lot of people do like this. So that's why DJI is making it like this. And one reason people like it is because the screen is just above them and then they can see their hands here. But to me, I don't look at my controller when I fly, but I guess a lot of people do. And the only other difference I could see is on the Mini 2 controller, it looks exactly like this. However, instead of saying tripod over here, it says Cine. So Cine is short for cinematic mode. So DJI loves going back and forth between tripod and cinematic mode. On some drones, they have both cinematic and tripod mode. So Cine mode is analogous for making the drone go a lot smoother and a lot slower. And that's a really helpful feature, but other than that, the controller is basically just the same as the Mavic Air 2. Now, one really nice thing about the Mini 2 is that it has accusync 2.0, and that was the thing I didn't really like about the original Mavic Mini. It couldn't go that far because it was just Wi-Fi, and I couldn't really fly it that far. So it's accusync 2.0, goes up to 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles in the United States. And then outside of the United States, that goes all the way up to 6 kilometers or 3.7 miles. So that's really good news. And that's a huge improvement and a huge reason to upgrade to this new Mini. Now it's also worth noting that DJI drones that have accusync 2.0 are also able to use with a smart controller. So if you wanted to use the smart controller, you could do that instead of using this. However, with the Mavic Air 2, that took a few months to implement. So I imagine when they release it, you may not be able to use it with the smart controller right away. You may have to wait a couple months for DJI to update that firmware. That's just so they can still sell the Mavic Air 2. It's sort of like a marketing ploy that I think DJI uses just to make sure that all their drones are selling, and then later on they do a firmware update that sort of fixes that. So if you can't use it with the smart controller right away, don't freak out. You will be able to. You just might have to wait a few months. All right, so cosmetically and the design of the drone almost looks exactly the same as the original Mavic Mini. The only difference is there's a little LED light on the front, and also the propellers have a little orange stripe on them. I think that's just for safety, so that little LED light in the front and the orange stripe on the propellers, it's just for safety. And the other thing is, if you look in the back, the design's the same. The batteries go in and out almost exact same as the Mini, only instead of using the black batteries, they're gonna use the gray batteries. So the color of the battery is gonna match the drone, if that matters to you, but to me it's no big deal. And the batteries will have 1 minute more flight time, 31 minutes instead of 30 minutes. Basically the same thing. So you have probably up to about, I'd say 27, 28 minutes of flight time max. And that flight time depends on how you fly the drone, the wind, and other conditions when you're flying. So in the back of the new Mini 2, it's not gonna use the micro USB. Instead, it's gonna use USB-C. So they keep changing between micro USB, USB-C. It gets kind of annoying that they keep changing it, but anyway, if you like USB-C, that's what's gonna be in the back of your drone. So the new bag is gonna look like this, which is the same as the Mavic Air 2, whereas the Mavic Mini used to look like this. And I guess a lot of people didn't like this because this was kind of like annoying to carry around. I guess you could carry it around sort of like a briefcase, a little one, but this one is nice because it has a shoulder strap. And yeah, so the bag looks great. I mean, it's a really nice look. Inside, you can put all your stuff. So it's nothing special, nice and simple. It also has this little zipper up top, so you can unzip down there and you can put stuff in there. And then you could also unzip the bag right there, and it has that compartment right there as well. So it's a very handy bag. It's very simple and easy to use, and you can put it on your shoulder and it's great. Now it's worth noting that the Mini 2 looks like it also has these kind of flimsy propellers, and one complaint a lot of people didn't like was that these are kind of flimsy, and when you put them in the bag, sometimes they might get like bent a little bit or slightly damaged, and that wasn't a good thing. So the new Mini 2 comes with a propeller kind of guard that just goes over the drone when you store it in the bag. So you just put that guard, it just like snaps right in, and then you just put it in your bag and you're all good. Now, from everything I've seen online, the Mini 2 does not have obstacle avoiding sensors. That was kind of a bummer. It only had it on the bottom. So because it doesn't have obstacle avoiding sensors, I have the feeling it's not gonna have active track, which a lot of people like. All right, so as I go through these specs, I thought it would be a good idea just to compare the original Mavic Mini with the new Mini 2. So we have the Mavic Mini as a point of reference to see whether it's worth the upgrade or not. So it appears that the drone is gonna be $50 more, but the combo, I'm still not sure if it's the same price as it used to be, $499, or is it gonna be $599? Now I've heard people who have bought it at Best Buy so far have paid $499, but the rumor online, a lot of people are saying that it's $599. So I think DJI might be testing the waters right now, and those prices could fluctuate. Anywhere between $499 to $599 for the combo. And even for $599, I still think that's a pretty good deal, and I'm gonna tell you why as we go through these specs. So the combo will come with a battery charging hub and 3 batteries. So that'll give you up to an hour and a half flight time. Realistically, in the real world, that's probably about an hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes of flight time, which is really, really good. And the only downside of that combo is that it doesn't come with the propeller guards like it did with the original Mavic Mini. So I was a little disappointed that they didn't include the propeller guards. And that makes me think that because they didn't include the propeller guards, that they might lower the price down to $499, which is what I'm hoping for. Now, unfortunately, the sensor is still 1/2.3 inches. I wish it was a little larger, but it's only 1/2.3 inches, 12 megapixels. And although I would like to see a bigger sensor, it does make sense because it's so small. It is kind of a bummer though, but it does shoot 4K. Now it shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second. The original Mini right here only shot 2.7K up to 30 frames per second. And from what I've read online, that's what CEO Frank Wang was really disappointed about, was that he wasn't happy with the image quality of the original Mini. So that was one of the main reasons why he came out with the Mini 2, which looks almost exactly like this. So the image quality is gonna be better. Now, a big factor why I think we'll see the bit rate go from 40 megabits per second all the way to 100 megabits per second is because he did want that image quality to be better, and going from 2.7K all the way up to 4K. 4K at 60 megabits per second, we could see that, but I think realistically we'll see 100 megabits per second. That makes sense. And then slow motion, it shoots 1080 up to 60 frames per second. Nothing crazy about that. If you want really good slow motion, then you're gonna wanna get the Mavic Air 2. The lens and shutter speed is also the same, so we're gonna see a 24mm lens, which is a nice wide angle lens, good field of view. And then you also have an f2.8 glass on the front, okay? That's the aperture. Now it's a fixed aperture, so you can't change that. It's not a huge deal for me, but that means we're gonna have to need an ND filter. So I'm hoping that the combo will come with ND filters, and we'll have to see about that. Shutter speed is the same, still from 4 seconds all the way to 1/8000th of a second, so nothing new there. It's gonna be a 3-axis gimbal, which is normal for all good drones nowadays. And it's gonna have 12 megapixels, but I think we're gonna see 12 megapixels JPEG and RAW. So adding the RAW feature to our photos is also gonna enhance our image quality. And again, like I said before, the CEO wasn't happy with the image quality. So I think all these little improvements, 4K, and now the ability to shoot RAW with our photos on the video and the photo side, both improving the quality, is something that we're gonna see with the Mini 2. And it also has panorama mode. So panorama mode, it will probably take a couple photos, stitch them together, so you can get a nice panorama without having to do that in post-production, which is really nice. And the image size is the same as the original Mavic Mini. All right, the max flight time, only 1 minute difference, so we get 1 more minute of flight time, which is nice. Not a huge deal there, but the next one is huge. Like I mentioned before, accusync 2.0, having that range going all the way up to 6 miles. I mean, no one really flies 6 miles, but it's gonna go a lot farther. You're gonna have better signal strength, whether you're flying in the countryside or the city. No matter where you fly, you're gonna be a lot happier, and you're not gonna have to worry about losing connection like you did with the Mavic Mini. Now the max speed should be around 29-30 miles an hour. Could be a little faster. That's not a huge deal to me because I usually don't fly that fast anyway. I like to get more smooth cinematic shots, and even 29 miles per hour, that's plenty fast for all the drone shots that you're gonna wanna get. However, the next category is another huge reason why you should upgrade. And the Mavic Mini, when it was windy out on a windy day, it just really wasn't that great, okay? The footage was kind of shaky, and the drone would be all over the place, and I get so worried, especially flying over water or in areas where I couldn't really retrieve the drone if it fell or something happened. And I've heard a lot of people online having flyaways and things like that due to the wind and the fact that the original Mavic Mini was so small. So the Mini 2 will be able to resist wind just like the Mavic Air 2. So it's gonna perform a lot better in wind. It's gonna be able to handle winds 19 to 24 miles per hour. They call that a level 5 for wind resistance. So I'm super pumped about that. The accusync and the wind resistance, having that distance and not worrying about the wind blowing away your drone, those are 2 huge reasons why you should upgrade. No obstacle avoidance, just the obstacle avoiding sensors. It's only on the bottom, the visual positioning system, that allows it to take off and land properly. Now, for intelligent flight modes, it does have boomerang. It also has the one tap, which is cool. And it should have the quick shot modes. Now, which quick shot modes? Is it gonna add active track? Is it gonna add hyperlapse or asteroid mode? We have to see. All right, internal storage, I don't think there's gonna be any, but in the back of the Mavic Mini, like the Mavic Mini, the Mini 2, you can just put your micro USB card right in there. And that should be where you store all your memory. That shouldn't be a surprise for anyone. And the Mini 2, like the original DJI Mavic Mini, will use the DJI Fly app. All right, that's it for specs. Now, if you want information about all different drones for all different price categories, from like $100 to like $10,000 or $20,000, I made a free drone gear guide that I break down every single drone in different price categories. I'll tell you about all different accessories, applications, and other things that can really help you be a better drone pilot. You can access that by clicking right up there or in the link below. I'm Brick Aramella, the Drone Pilot Pro, and remember, fly like a pro.